By now, you have heard the developing headline: the Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade, a decision from 1973 that protected a woman's right to an abortion. The Supreme Court ruled abortion decisions should be left up to the states instead. Governor Cooper responded to the ruling, saying in part, "For 50 years, women have relied on their constitutional right to make their own medical decisions. But today, that right has been tragically ripped away." Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson issued his own statement saying, "I am overjoyed with the decision by our Supreme Court. For decades, we've been praying for a day like today, and it is finally here." The decision has created a whole lot of questions. To help you sort it out, 2 Once Know's Tanya Rivera has 3 experts here to answer your pressing questions.
Yeah, we know there's a whole lot to dig into with this ruling. So we have a group of experts who can talk about a wide range of impacts. We have Scott Friedland from Elon Law School, Rebecca Kreitzer from UNC to discuss the legal impacts and the processes. We also have Dr. Amelia Davis, the interim director of nursing from North Carolina A&T, to discuss how today's ruling could impact healthcare here in our state. So if you have questions about all of this, the legal, the health, the political system fallout, our experts can answer those questions. We want to give context to you with this big issue. You can text us those questions, 336-379-5775. That's how you get your question to us. Remember, your question is anonymous, but you get answered in real time. All right, first and foremost, Steve, let's first just talk about, a lot of times people think that a SCOTUS ruling is an opinion, that they believe that abortion is wrong. Let's talk about how it is not an opinion.
So judges issue opinions, but opinions just means written rulings. And that's what we have here in the Dobbs case, a very long written ruling that essentially says that abortion is not constitutionally protected. It is not supposed to be about the judge's own personal opinions. And Justice Alito, who wrote this opinion, is emphatic about trying to get that point across.
And so what they're looking at is what the argument's being made and also what the Constitution says, what the law says, how it matches up. A lot of people are also wondering about the timeline. So Rebecca, can we talk about that, about how the Supreme Court decides when they're going to take something up and overrule it or not?
The Supreme Court decides they have something that's called the Rule of 4. So if at least 4 justices on the Supreme Court are interested in hearing a case, then they'll decide to hear it. And we don't always know ahead of time which side those 4 people are, like if they're on the conservative or the more liberal side. So 4 of them decided that they wanted to take up this case. Why now? Well, there's no specific reason why now, other than advocates who were hoping to change the status quo about abortion thought that now was a timely time to bring forth a case. And at least 4 justices on the Supreme Court decided to take that up. And so that's what we've seen now. And in fact, that's even discussed in the dissent by Justice Breyer, when he notes that in the last 50 years since Roe was decided, there haven't been any significant changes to laws or to facts or to public attitudes about the issue of abortion. Really, the only thing that's changed is who is on the Supreme Court. This fits with something that I always try to convey to my students, which is that what is constitutional today depends heavily on who is currently on the Supreme Court and what they say is constitutional.
Okay, and we can talk more about that as well. Dr. Davis, let's talk about the possible impacts that this could possibly have on our state. We know a lot of neighboring states have those trigger laws, so there will be an immediate ban on abortions. What does that mean for our healthcare system?
So what that means for our healthcare system is there will be an influx of patients seeking this type of healthcare and this type of support coming into our state. It may put an impact of challenging the capacity and the limitations for these clinics that support these type of services for these patients. So it will definitely impact the access to service, possibly to our patients in our state, as well as others seeking that type of health care.
Okay. Steve, as we continue to take a look just at the ruling itself, I know we were talking earlier and you said this is about law and this is about science.
Well, it's really about law as a science, not law as politics. And that's the difference. This is not supposed to be political. However, we see that many people view it as political, and we have people who have definitely are using this in a political sense. but this is supposed to be a decision that's based on traditional interpretation of the Constitution. It's all about how the Constitution is interpreted. This is an issue, though, because this is an implied right to privacy. It's not expressly stated in the Constitution. So justices can have different views because it's implied, and that's what we see in this case.
We saw that several of our North Carolina lawmakers were talking about asking the Department of Justice here in our state to reinstate the 20-week ban here in North Carolina. Rebecca, what would it take to make that happen?
Well, now that the Supreme Court has ruled that there can be restrictions on abortion, it means that a law that's currently enjoined, not enforceable in North Carolina, can now go into effect. And that would limit the gestational period in which people can get an abortion in North Carolina to 20 weeks from viability, which is generally around 24 weeks currently. Though it's worth noting that viability technically actually varies with individual pregnancies, and it's not like a light switch where it just like turns on and turns off. Several of the policymakers here in North Carolina have said that they are happy and excited to take up the issue of abortion. However, we only have a few days left in the current session, and we have some fiscal matters to take care of. So it seems to me that the issue of abortion will be a high priority for the Republican Party in the NCGA in the next session.
All right, we're talking about changing it from 24 weeks to 20 weeks. So my question, Dr. Davis, is what changes in those 4 weeks for a woman medically or for the baby medically? What would be that we need to focus on those 4 weeks?
So at about 20 weeks, the baby is the size of a bell pepper, and you start having what's called quickening, and the mother can feel the baby. In about 24 weeks, that's when the baby starts to develop eye opening, skin thickening, and reflexes. And so there's not much difference, but besides the baby's growing a little more.
Okay, and is that when we would be able to detect birth defects in between that 20 and 24, or is that later?
You can detect some around that time, and some are detected later.